What up, guys? Welcome to the podcast today. Eugene and I are going to share an idea with you guys. It's something I was talking to the camp about. I just recently had the July 2023 Jiu-Jitsu camp down in Costa Rica. And during the actual technical portions of teaching, I was sharing little principles along the way that I think are very important, more mindset stuff, not necessarily conceptual principles for techniques like, you always lift the arm or whatever, but more of an approach or an idea as a way to approach Jiu-Jitsu. I think those are important because those become universal regardless of what the technique or position is. And so in that, with one of the principles I share, I think it's super important because I think it's something that a lot of people don't do very well. And if they do, they could do it better, I think, in a lot of cases. And it's something where if you understand this, it's something that all the best people do. And it a lot of times can help really cut down on all of the overwhelming sort of feeling that people have in jiu-jitsu where they're bombarded with so much information. If you take this principle home, it will help direct you and it can help you avoid all those overwhelming feelings of not knowing what to focus on because you have so many options. So we'll talk about that in just a bit, and I hope it helps your jiu-jitsu out. Also, thanks to you guys for being here with us. And a big thanks to Charlotte's Web for helping make the podcast happen. If you guys haven't checked them out, Charlotte's Web is a CBD company. To me, they're one of the premier CBD companies out there. They third-party test all their products. And they recently came out with a new line called Recreate, which is basically the CBD that they make that everybody knows and uses, right? And then they've also combined them with things like lion's mane and other supplements and things like that to help out with everything from brain support to endurance, muscle recovery, rest, depending on what you want to use recovery or use CBD for, because a lot of people experience different benefits from it. Some people tend to find that CBD can help them with an improved sort of focus when they're doing things. Other people find that it tends to help them be a little bit more relaxed and help with support rest and even deal with exercise-induced inflammation, which is, again, that's kind of my personal take on it as I use it for my recovery. As you get a little bit older, I'm 38 now, so knocking on 40's door, and those hard days of training, they take it out of me a little bit differently than they did 10 years ago, so I'm always trying to look for another tool for recovery to support myself so that I can continue to be at my best. Even as I get a little bit older, and CBD is one of those things that I throw into the mix. And again, you guys can try it out for yourself and see how it affects you. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is a little different, right? We're all a little unique. And so how you respond to the supplements and medicine that you take in are always going to be different. So again, try it out for yourself. My encouragement to you is to buy one of the products at charlottesweb.com, try it out for a month, see what kind of effects you have on it, and then kind of go from there. Their website is charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, thanks to epicrollbjj.com. You can check them out there. Again, with their stuff, if you've got that urge to buy a new gi, rash guard, shorts, t-shirt, anything jiu-jitsu related, go to their website, epicrollbjj.com, browse through the website, find something you like, and then if you want to, you can save 15% off by using the promo code Jiu-Jitsu, which will save you 15%. Again, the guy that runs that website, that runs the Epic Roll brand, right, Matt, he's a friend of ours, and he's been good to us. And he's also a Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Again, that may not seem like a big deal to you, but for me, I like companies that are made by Jiu-Jitsu guys in the Jiu-Jitsu space, opposed to every now and then, I'll get messages from companies that'll say they're actually in the space, but they're not actually in the space. They're just people coming in there that see it as like a niche where they can make some money. But Matt is a jiu-jitsu guy through and through. He makes the designs and he does good quality work. So check him out at epicrollbjj.com. Also, thanks to Choke Coffee for supporting the podcast. You can check them out at chokecoffeeco.com, chokecoffeeco.com. Choke Coffee, they make good quality beans. They roast good quality beans. They deliver them to your door. It's a good cup of coffee. I've messed around with them and tried them on different coffee gadgets, everything from my pour over to my AeroPress to my French press, all that stuff, to try them out. And it's good coffee. One of the cool things they're doing right now is they're taking a portion of their proceeds and they're supporting the Guardian Gym organization. If you're unfamiliar with the Guardian Gym organization, what happens is the Guardian Gym goes into places and offers MMA training to basically you would say like kids that are underprivileged, kids that don't have parents that can afford a normal gym membership, kids that wouldn't normally have the means to get to those places, and they support those kids in those areas by doing that. And it's super cool. They do that, and this is like a worldwide thing. Like there's several of these in different places across the world. Obviously, there's one. I think the first one was in California. We actually had one of the founders on the podcast some episodes ago, and then they've since then expanded it into some different areas. And so again, Show Coffee Co. is a coffee company made by jiu-jitsu practitioners for jiu-jitsu practitioners, and they're helping support a really cool cause right now. So again, if you go to their website at chokecoffeeco.com and you buy any of their products, like with their coffee beans and stuff like that, again, you can get 10% off by using the promo code Jiu-Jitsu, and your portion of your money will go to the Guardian Gym. So it's a way to basically get some good coffee and make a donation to a cool cause. So check them out at showcoffeeco.com. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Chewjitsu Podcast. Upon joining, you'll get access to the exclusive library that we've been building for several years. You'll also get access to an ad-free version of this podcast. So if you absolutely despise these ads that I read to you guys, then you can always go there. Again, I try to make sure the products are cool, and Eugene does as well. We try to make sure we only have good products on here that we like. But I know sometimes some people are touchy about ads. But if you want to get an ad-free version and also receive some cool content along with two of the things that I think are really important that are in there. There is a seminar that I recorded years ago, which I think is a really good seminar, going through some of my best techniques, gi and no gi. And then Eugene has a warm-up / muscle activation video. Takes about 20 minutes to go through it, which again was designed specifically for jiu-jitsu people in mind. You get access to that as soon as you join, and again for a very inexpensive price. So check it out at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. And last but not least, if you would like to get my daily email, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to to several free ebooks that I give away. And then afterwards, you will receive my daily email, which can go into pretty much anything, God knows what, everything from jiu-jitsu lessons to books that I'm reading to philosophical ideas that I find interesting to takes that I have on, some things that are going on, whatever it might be. But I try to keep it as a fun and entertaining email. And again, if you like to read just a little bit, you might find it enjoyable. And if you like the ideas that I share on the podcast and in my videos, then it would be something to check out. Again, chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. All right, guys. So with that said, let's jump into this podcast. Check it out. Here's the idea that we'll get started with. Imagine you went to a bar with your friend and you're eating some wings. I am personally not a big fan of wings. It's a lot of investment, a lot of mess for very little return of protein. But nonetheless, let's say you're eating wings with your buddy. All right, so your buddy gets up, he bites into the wing, eats one bite, and sets it down in the finished pile. That little pile of bones, right? But he sets it down. It's got all kinds of meat left on it. He grabs a new wing, bites into it, puts it down to the finished pile, and he keeps doing this. You would kind of start to look at him and go, "Hey, bro, like you need to finish those wings. You're being awfully wasteful." And this is kind of the way that some people approach jiu-jitsu, right? They get good at like one technique out of a position, and then if they start to experience trouble with that technique, they just like sit the whole damn thing on the shelf and they go into a whole new area, right? They feel like they need something brand new now. And this is something that I touched on a bit at the camp that we just did this past weekend in Costa Rica, where I was showing the side control position and how I use it. And I was showing like attacking the arms, the shoulders, wrists, the neck, both arms, so far side, near side arm, attacking everything that you can, because when you do that, and this is the way I look at it, you're getting all the meat off the bone. When you do that, the person doesn't know what you're going to do. They can't just defend one thing. And that's the issue that a lot of people have, is if they become too reliant on simply one technique, then they become predictable. But if your attacks are basically varied out and you have so many different things you can do, again, you're still going to have your best weapons, but if you have those other options on the table, you can keep the person guessing, and you have just options everywhere. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of times when you look at really good jiu-jitsu practitioners, people that, we would say are some of the best, watch them and they become very good at a position. They become synonymous with a position, not just with one technique. And you'll watch them bring someone into their little sliver of jiu-jitsu, and it's almost as if they're taking you on a road or into like some area, and they know all the roads and all the side roads and the back roads and everything else, and you don't, right? Like eventually, even if you stop one thing, they're going to get you in another place, because they know all the detours and things like that, and you don't have the map for it. And that's typically, when you look at really good jiu-jitsu practitioners, that's a practice that they do. They get really good at a position, not just with one technique, and they can basically take you around, and essentially, no matter what you do, they're going to get something. I know one of my black belts, Chad, back in the day, he had a great triangle choke. I've watched Chad go into black belt divisions and finish like a whole division with like under 5 minutes of mat time combined, right? Just completely wax guys with just the triangle choke. But one of the things about Chad's triangle choke is, even if you stop it, he's got all kinds of arm locks and choke variations and all kinds of other stuff that he can do from that position. It's not just the triangle choke itself. He has all kinds of attacks off of it. And so you have to take that same approach. You got to try to get all the meat off the bone, so to speak, of your positions. You need to go in there, and you have to, once you get good, like with one of your techniques there, it's then your job to then focus on that area and try to round out the rest of the stuff that's going on there. So for instance, let's say maybe you're really good at mount. Okay, you got a really good mounted armbar. Then when you're looking up techniques and stuff, you should be looking for things that are going to connect with that. You should be looking from things from mount that you can immediately add in, and then, try to attack other options like chokes, maybe different versions of arm locks or shoulder locks, things like that from mount, to basically diversify your attack. So this way, like a person, when you're rolling with them, they don't know what you're going to do. They don't know how you're going to attack them. And if they defend one thing, they have to, respond to the next thing. And so it's just it's a simple idea that you can implement. But if you use it like that and you understand it like that, then it really, you don't get overwhelmed that much in jiu-jitsu, because you can just look at, well, where am I attacking from right now? What's working for me? Let's go to that position. Let me search up stuff from that area, and I'm going to try to work on this, opposed to bouncing around from one thing to the next and essentially eating that one bite of wing and then throwing it off to the side.
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways to go about this. Sometimes it's it's basically based on necessity. Like you get into a position, like say you get into a mount, and all of a sudden you can't finish people anymore. You're finishing with collar chokes or arm bars, whatever it is from mount, and you can't finish. And so it starts being like a point of like, all right, now I'm here, now I'm getting comfortable in this position, spending more time in this position. What do I do? And a lot of times that'll come with you discovering different stuff, starting to go for different things and playing. And it might come from basic reactions, like, all right, so somebody's really protecting their neck, right? Well, then are their arms exposed? It sometimes is based on like, man, now I'm not having success. And that could mean like hitting submissions from there.
Yep.
Or it could mean like, you start to spend more time in there and you'll get certain reactions. So there's one way to go about it. Is there a way that you developed kind of all these techniques from side control? Was it like you just went for one thing and then you kind of have to deconstruct and go backwards, or you got certain reactions?
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of both, right? Because it's like, okay, a little bit of it is, yeah, you have a reaction from someone, so therefore you're forced to do something different, right? So there's that. And then there's also just one of those things where sometimes you'll hit plateaus, or even stretches of boredom. When you've been training for 20 years, right? Like sometimes that can happen. So you have to mix things up. And the best way to do it is say, let's do something different. Instead of doing what I've been doing, let's just do something different. It's a very simple way to shake up plateaus, to break out of a funk, to make things fun again, because all you got to do then is have something new to focus on. And instantly it's like, oh, I've got something new I'm chasing, right? And so it's a little bit of all of that, right? So there'd be times where, okay, the shotgun armbar isn't working. Well, now I've got to mix it up. Or, man, everybody's defending my Kimura. Well, let's attack something else. Or, I saw this cool side control technique. Let me try this thing out, right? But also understanding this, so it gives me an eye. So even let's say if I'm not looking for something new, if I understand that probably the most efficient way for me to bring something into my game and to improve is to add something to a position that's already in place, then I have an eye for those positions, right? I'm not necessarily looking for the inverted, whatever guard. It's not the kind of game that I play. So if I see it, I'll look at it and say, interesting. But unless I want to go down that rabbit hole, I'm not, which is, it isn't really going to be a thing because I'm almost 40 years old and I don't want to break my neck. It's something that I don't mess with. But when I see something from side control, from half guard, butterfly guard, certain types of double underpassing, I have an eye for those positions because that's what I use. I remember being at the 2022 Worlds, right? And I was there. I took third, and then I was there watching the black belts go, or the adult black belts go later on. And I was watching, and it's a friend of mine, acquaintance, I guess you'd say, a guy named Devontae Johnson. I was watching him compete, and he did a double under pass, but he did a weird little like shuck with his head, and it worked. I was like, well, yeah, I had to go back and watch it. I was like, what is that? I wrote it down on my phone. I was like, go watch this match later because I have an eye for that position. And so again, getting the most meat off your bones, off the bone, right? That means like, okay, then we have to have an eye for our positions. And again, how do you find those positions? You experiment, you play, but eventually all of us find that we tend to be good from certain areas of jiu-jitsu. And when you find those areas, then you have to make sure that you are always on the lookout for that thing, that idea, or that those techniques from those positions, because that's where you're going to get the most, opposed to, watching an Instagram video and they do some really cool thing from a position that you don't ever use.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to go start working from the other side, passing to the other side, and then starting to, it's so weird to see how people are really, really good on one side defending or even playing a good defensive guard or whatever it is. But then you go to the other side and all of a sudden it's like, that goes for both everyone, the person that's attacking and the person defending. Some people's defense is very strong from one side and it's not great from the other. So being versatile, going from one side to the other and then developing skills from the other side is really crucial. And it's maybe a question for you. What do you think? And this is a question I think we've talked about before, but like my wife started training, she's been training about 6 months consistently. And we're working on developing some techniques and teaching her stuff. Do you think, and this might be dependent on the person, do you think it's better to like really clean up a position or a technique from one side and then go to the other? Or do you feel like it's better to do one side and the other kind of equally and develop them kind of together? Maybe it won't be as good. Neither side will be as good because you don't have as much time in those positions or in those on those sides versus one side. Like, what do you think it works better? I think it's different for everyone.
It is different. Well, I think it's different, but it's not different. So first off, yeah, you can take writing as an example. Try writing with your non-dominant hand. If you haven't done it much, it's probably going to be atrocious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my handwriting's already terrible with my dominant hand. So like my left hand is basically illegible. But the as far as your question goes, I mean, that's basically, you should focus on one side first. Because again, like when we're practicing a move, right? What are we going for? We're trying to figure out, what does it feel like to do it right? And again, right or correct, like a version of it, right? Because again, you can do something that is correct, it is done correctly, and it'll still get better like for years, right? Like I was able to do a mostly correct armbar when I was a white belt. But like my armbar now is way different. The details, the sensitivity to everything's way different now. And so in the beginning, what you're trying to do is you're trying to essentially, when you're learning a technique, you're trying to do your best to mimic your coach, to standardize it to where like because if you want to think about this, when you first are trying to do a technique, when you just first learned it, there's going to be a lot of variation because your movements are not standardized for that technique. So every time you do it, it's a little different because you're trying to learn it, right? After a while, you start to, have some muscle memory, and that particular techniques becomes more standard. It becomes very consistent.
Yes.
And it's probably going to be very consistent with what your coach showed. But then if you go down the rabbit hole and you keep working on that technique for a long time, variation is going to reemerge, right? Because then it's as you do that, you're going to make the technique your own. It's going to start to change depending on you and your style and everything else. And so eventually that technique will become new again. It'll become different than what your coach showed you originally, maybe similar, but different. And so what we're trying to do is we're at least trying to get to the point so there's some standardization where like where you can do the technique without it being like very different every single time. Right. And so once you get there, you know what it feels like to do it correctly. So that this way, when you go to the other side, you know what it feels like to do it correctly, and you can gauge whether or not you've done it correctly compared to the other side, because you'll know it feels off.
Right.
At that point, you can kind of teach yourself a little bit, because I mean that's honestly that's what happens. Think about it. Like when you do a technique, and if you do it wrong, you start to know it's wrong. Well, how do you know it's wrong? Because it feels wrong, right? You're not necessarily looking at something. You just know it's off. It just feels off. And so that's when you take it over to the other side and you practice the technique, and you can go, ooh, this one feels off. And then you can think about why it feels off based upon compared to the other side. And you have enough information to teach yourself to some degree. Obviously, you can have your coach help, but you'll have enough to correct yourself. Like a lot of times I'll watch students who are in that phase of adding something new to their other side, or they're taking a technique that's almost in that stage of being pretty standardized, and I can see them make a slip up, and then I'll see them make the correction next time because they were able to recognize it, and they could practice, they could teach themselves a little bit like, ooh, that was wrong. Instead of having me to come over there and say, hey, that was the wrong placement of your foot. They knew it was wrong because they could teach yourself. So again, when you're adding a new technique, you start by getting one side pretty good. It's not going to be perfect. One side pretty good to where it feels comfortable. It's not changing every single time you do the rep because you're brand new to it. And then you move to the other side.
Yeah. I think like, I was just thinking as you're saying that you kind of have a feeling, right? And then having a technique that's effective, right? If you're not effective, I mean, I don't want to say your arm bars were not effective when you were a white belt. They were effective to an extent.
I mean, I hit them on white belts and blue belts. They were effective,
They've become more effective because then you start hitting them on purple, brown, blacks, right? So I think the effectiveness, I think there's a lot of variety. And also the other thing is like you have the point of the arm bar you have, like here's the standard way to, you extend the elbow to elicit the submission, but then how you get there and maybe how you apply your grips, where you position your hips a little bit, what you do, how you set it up, all that stuff comes back to the variability of like your specific, likes and dislikes, your preferences, and also your body type. Because, some people, you've got a good like little corkscrew arm bar, right? You hit that a lot. And that's something that you're really good at, and you've developed a certain way to do it. There's different ways to hit that arm bar, or even versions of the arm bar, but you've done that one. That's kind of your thing. So, I think there's like the position or the technique, the effectiveness of it is like there's a standard way to hit it. And then there's like some variations. Like some people have a very unique ways, Chad or even Matt from our gym who hits a lot of triangles. They have a different way of setting things up, so then you have maybe even like we talked about deconstructing, you start with the submission and then work your way back. Like setups or entries, or even like kind of almost like you're throwing like kind of, I don't want to say audibles like in football, like you're trying to throw people off, but you're like feints, like you're doing different feints. You'll start throwing that stuff in. Like I'm pretending to go for a position, but I'm going for something else. And so you can even use your standard position to weave off and do something else.
Well, sure. Well, and that's that's the point of having as many things, as many attacks and options ready to go from a position, is that again, you can kind of throw people off of your scent. Right.
Yes.
You can go for things, and you can put up a smoke screen because you have other things to attack. You could like, there's times where, I might be thinking of a choke. And so I'll attack the arms. I'll be attacking both arms. And then once the neck becomes open, boom, I go for the neck and get the submission easier. Opposed to if I immediately went for the neck and they instantly know I'm going for the neck and they start defending, then it's going to be difficult. But if I make them think about something else and then go to what I go to something else, right, then you're using a little bit of deception. And again, that has a powerful addition to your game, because the submissions become easier if the person doesn't know it's coming.
Oh yeah, and like you make it a chain. So like you make it like you have like your main branch, and then you have like these other small little branches that come off
Hmm.
of it, right? So because you can go one way back, you can go off to one side, come back to the other, go back to maybe you have a really good side control, but then you can go to a reverse case katami position. There you can go to north south, right? Those are kind of like I'd say like brother or sister for that main position from that standard side control
Sure.
position. So then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go here. Or you can even go from side control to mount. I mean, you have all these, like, this is like home base, right?
Hmm.
And you can go this way and go that way. And I think, you can go from one side, switch into the other side, maybe you move into mount and then go to the other side control. So you just have like so many, everything links together, right? And I think that's the thing. Like, think of the chain. It's like you're going from one to the other and go back this way and back, and you just kind of go back and forth. But then the other thing, you talk about getting meat off the bone. We did that shotgun armbar. We did shotgun armbar, but then we also went from a choke, and then you can go from the choke to north south, right? You can do a choke off the side control position to a north south choke, then going back to the other side. So it's just like linking all the way. It's like you have this just entire like game sequence. And when you showed the stuff that you showed at the camp, it was funny because I was talking to my wife about it, and I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen you get in that position in a tournament and not finish.
Mm.
Like, I'm sure it's happened, but I don't
It's
remember.
happened a
It's
couple times, but
very
it's rare.
rare. It's very rare because usually here's the standard thing. Because when we watch you get to that side control, you get reverse case katami, you look at the clock to make sure you get your points. You're like, got points? All right, now I'm going to finish just to make sure. It's like I almost watch you every time you do the same sequence. You get the position, you hold it, you get your points, you kind of check that you got your points. Maybe it's your coach or whoever else, and you finish it. And it's so interesting to see that because then, when you were doing those same positions in camp, we saw people start doing that in camp too, like start to get to those positions. And it's even harder to finish because we've all been, training
You already
bit,
know it's coming. Yeah.
but if you're good at it, if you're getting good at it, you can go back and forth and start to kind of get people off the scent. Well, I'm going to go here for the arm. Nope. Now I'm going to go for the neck. And you go back and forth there.
Yeah, like the first couple of days of camp, I was like really loose with a lot of my rolls to just let people move around.
Sure.
And then the last couple of days, I like started to basically use the position. Like I was going from arm to neck and just basically showing people this position that they're learning is like it is effective, and here's how it feels, so they can walk away with that. But yeah, I mean, like that position, those positions I showed, those are my money positions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I said at the camp, like everyone gets a deck of cards, right? You only get 4 aces, and the idea behind that is you only get a handful of positions and techniques that are going to be really good for you. You're not going to master everything. And so that's one of those things where this is my position. Like this is where, like you said, rarely do I get there in a competition and I don't finish. Like once I get a hold of their arm, generally I finish. It's pretty rare that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it goes against some of the I guess the common knowledge now, where like someone sent me a message and they said, Chewy, do you like use side control or do you always go to mount? Because so and so said that you should always go to mount, right? And I was like, well, like you must have not watched my matches. I was like, but again, whenever I hear someone say the word always, I'm like, that's dogma. That's because again, every one of us gets better at different places. I'm like, I don't really like mount that much. Mount's okay, and I'll go to mount under certain conditions, but most of the time I have a better finish rate from side control. And I have all kinds of things that link from side control to the back.
Yes.
So again, those are my 2 positions. I don't really like going to mount. I like back control and I like side control. Those are my 2 favorites.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the idea. And so what was neat for me, at least at the camp, is, this is something actually people enjoyed. So like when I do camps where I have people for multiple days, typically I pick out like a movement or a drill that we will use every single day to warm up with, because, the way that I look at it is my job is to leave them with something that they can use when they go back home. I think that a mistake that a lot of coaches make is they try to force feed people a massive amount of information. And that can be cool. It can be all right. But I think that it ends up turning into a situation where, if you've ever been to a really good comedy show and you've been laughing constantly because the dude is just delivering one banger after another, right? You're just
Mhm.
laughing the whole time. If you try to talk about what happened, you may not be able to recall any of the jokes. You're like, "Oh, because there's just so many good ones," right? And so a lot of times that happens with techniques where coaches come in and they'll teach a ton of techniques, and it's impressive, I guess, in some respects because they know so much,
Yeah.
but it doesn't really benefit the person who's attending because do they have it, at least in my philosophy, because what am I trying to give them when they leave? I want them to have something that works when they leave this camp. I could give two shits whether or not you think I am impressive because of how much stuff I know. What I want to have happen is I want you to leave and go, damn, I just hit that technique. And we actually had several people like post in the WhatsApp group that we have. It's like, oh, I just hit the technique, which is super cool. But I want them to leave and I want them to have a new weapon in their game that they can take and go use. Because to me, there's nothing better than being able to have a new technique in your game that you can use and use effectively. And so that will start to drill like that. And again, everybody liked that. I had several, that was like the main comment I had from people was that it was so fun being able to just drill and rep a technique over and over and over again. And then we just added more stuff to those areas. You know, we didn't go completely off script. We said, hey, we're doing this. You know what else we can do with this? We can do this. And then basically was showing them all the details that work if you had those two main positions down pat.
Mhm. Well, talking about getting meat off the bone, we had a shoulder lock, or we had actually no, we had an arm bar or a
We had an arm
shoulder
bar. We
lock.
talked on a shoulder lock, yeah. Wrist
Yep,
lock.
shoulder lock. We had a wrist lock, right?
We had three chokes.
Yep. All from kind of like different, like a couple different setups, right? So it's
Uh-huh.
all like, and a lot of it's like, I would think of it as like a kickboxer or a boxer, right?
Mhm.
Going to the body, going to the body, going to the body, and they start blocking the body. You hit the head, you
Right.
hit the head. They're blocking up high, you hit them low, and then you start adding kind of hooks and stuff like that, strike, whatever. So it's just like you're adding, it's only a couple different punches you're throwing, but you're throwing them in a sequence and trying to get
Mhm.
reactions, and then you get better at the reactions. Your timing gets better, and then you hit them. Like we've done those techniques, but never to that capacity. We've never drilled them. I've never drilled them to that capacity. And I was actually hitting them. I was like, oh wait, it's here, it's there.
Mhm.
And I started like using them because I have them in my repertoire, but they're not like they're maybe a 9 or a 10. They're not a king or a queen,
Yeah.
rank,
It's
right?
not a
So
face card.
they're getting up there for me, and I kind of enjoyed it. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna." It kind of made me a little more excited. Now there
Yeah.
was other things I was excited about at camp. Like there was a guy, Glenn, leg locked me. So I
Yeah.
was excited about getting in some leg lock entanglements and seeing what my leg lock defense was like and my
Uh-huh.
attacking. And so I did that a little bit too. Just to it's fun to do that as well. But learning how to solidify these techniques, that's what, especially for the younger belts out there, the newer grapplers, like you're teaching them the value. If maybe that's not the technique that they develop, but you're teaching them the value of what it's like to develop a technique like that.
Mhm.
Like, hey, this is what it takes. So if you want to get good at this thing, whether it's the shotgun armbar or a triangle or whatever else, you can do that. But now you know what it takes to get there, because
Mhm.
it's so easy to like you have like ADHD on the mats. Like, ooh, a squirrel, a
Mhm.
squirrel, this, that, just like you get you see something flashy and you want to go to it and you want to learn it. But then you leave kind of your technique you've been working on. So I think as an educational thing, as something, a learning tool, I think it was the concepts more than anything were extremely valuable for a lot of people there, and for me as well, because I was like, oh yeah, I need to do this. I need to continue to work on techniques even after we've already moved on to something else, right?
Mhm.
We've moved on to a different position, but on my own, I still need the value of drilling. I need to develop those techniques, and I think even if people didn't get the technique down, which I think most people did, you kind of realize what it takes, how to kind of make that groove and to be
Mhm.
able to fall into that groove.
Yeah,
So,
and
and I like that.
it's nice because, again, I get messages all the time from people who are like, well, so and so says that drilling is a waste of time or drilling. I was like, bro, I get it. It's like everybody's trying to like reinvent the wheel, so to speak, or whatever. But again, boxers, even after they've mastered their art, they still hit pads, they still practice. Football players, wide receivers still go run their routes. They still practice their pads. They, wrestlers in college and elite and in the Olympic level, they still drill. They still practice their movement. They practice it, and try to get perfect. Now, there is a difference between just going through the motions and being very mindful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a big difference, right? Like just going through the motions. Okay. Like half talking to your partner about the barbecue you went to last Saturday, opposed to being very mindful. What does it feel like to do this movement? That's a difference. And you want to be mindful of your movements, but drilling's super important. And by the end of the week, everybody that struggled with the technique, they were moving very well through the drills. And like I said, I've already gotten several messages from people that have already hit the technique when they went back home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was fun. I was like, that was exciting.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, being there as a first time attendee, what did you enjoy about the camp? Was there anything in particular that stood out to you?
The environment.
Okay.
The welcoming environment of so people, the practitioners, the jiu-jitsu practitioners that are there at Hero, they are so used to visitors, and you can tell.
Sure.
You can tell how used to, because in my head, I'm on vacation. This is a bone. I get to go do jiu-jitsu. This is built, this vacation is kind of like jiu-jitsu is like the kind of what it circles around, but it's really about vacation. So for me, I'm like, I'm going to have fun. I didn't go in with the mentality of like kill or be killed, baby. I'm going to take heads, take arms. No, I went like, I'm going to move around. And if somebody gives me if they turn it up a little, I'm going to turn it up. But I like the environment. It was just very chill. People knew that they were there to learn. And the campers were super cool. Everybody was kind of there to learn, but it's also the environment of Hero, and like how they were kind of welcoming the regulars that were there were really cool. They had really unique kind of skill sets they were very good at. Like I said, Glenn's a really solid leg locker, and then you had some other guys. I rolled with a lot of black belts that were similar to me in their 40s. Black belts had some years on them, and that was fun too to get some different looks. But what I think you did really well, you set the intention in a way the very first day, where I think comes from experience, where people come in and they go balls to the wall, and then they're like just burnt out and beat up the rest of the trip.
Sure.
And like, you want to get the most, you want to get all the meat off the bones, right? That means physically being in a decent shape, and also mentally. You don't want to, because if you're physically exhausted and that heat can take it out of you, you're mentally not going to be there. So there's some days I was pretty tired, but I wasn't like, once I got to moving around, I felt good. So I think the way that you kind of structured it, hey guys, like, here's the intention. Don't go crazy.
Yeah, pace yourself.
Pace yourself, which is something that I think everybody needed to hear, that it was okay to do that. But then also, like, you did a good job reading the room. You say, all right, everybody's starting to kind of wind down. I can see that. I can see what the energy is. I can see how much we got in the tank. Let's not completely wear everybody out, right? Let's not completely get to empty. So you got us to right where we were close to empty, but not there. And then that we had more energy the next day. Yeah. Because I think once you get completely flat, it's like hard to get back up. So
it is. Well, it's like, one, like, again, studies show that we really only have somewhere around 45 minutes to an hour worth of really intense learning in us. And after that, we're basically freaking spinning the wheels. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to need a break, right? You can always come back and get more, but you're going to need a break. But a single bout of learning, typically 45 minutes to an hour max.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so again, yes, your things can last a little longer, but the actual time that you spend drilling and things like that. And so, usually you watch people and you see a group, and all of a sudden you start seeing them drift off. And you're like, at this point, we need to stop, because again, we're not going to be helping anything by like shoving more stuff down them, because they're not going to retain any of it. Also, to what you said, it's a wise idea to stop before it gets completely burned out. It's kind of like, there's a lot of writers that talk about this. They'll talk about writing. I forgot which one. It may have been, maybe it was Hemingway. I can't remember. He was talking about the fact that, when he would write, he would stop when he felt like he was at a pretty good spot. So he wouldn't write to the point where he felt like he had nothing left. He would write like 3/4 of the way, where he felt like he still had a good chunk left and he knew where he was going with the story, and he would stop there. This way, the next day he would come back. All right, I'm ready to go. Right, I'm ready to be here. Opposed to, wearing yourself out, and then the next day you come in, you're like, oh god, you don't, you're like you're starting from a sort of a deficit, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so leaving yourself a little bit, just leaving a little bit left in the tank so that you can use it the next time. And again, I know that goes against the prevailing sort of motivational hype train stuff of like go hard and spend everything out, whatever. But it's a good idea to sometimes leave a little bit in the tank for yourself. So this way, when you come back the next day, you're not working from a deficit, whereas, you can burn yourself out. I mean, don't get me wrong, willpower is a beautiful thing, and you can will yourself through to continue training, to continue to do stuff and put yourself in the hole. But then remember, you're going to have to recover out of that. And again, my whole thing is, I think of training more about focus on it, more of a focus on consistency, and so I wanted to make sure that everybody was there that we could make it consistently the whole time, opposed to burning them out mentally and physically within a day or two, and then having, small classes the rest of the week because everybody's still recovering. I wanted to basically stimulate them, not annihilate them. That's the idea.
And it was like exciting, like you were kind of ready to learn the next day too.
Yep.
It's such a unique environment to learn in. Like I literally, when you're going into jiu-jitsu and it's a normal work week, you're like, shit, I'm tired. Like, cause you don't really, I got to go rest physically. I got to rest mentally, it's on vacation. So like, it's like a little bit of a cheat code. You get all these, like, there's no way I could do that many training sessions regularly, like right now, like just with the work I have to do, because I don't get that
work,
rest.
kids, wife, the whole thing.
Yeah. And so it was like, man, this is awesome, because I felt my body felt pretty good. Actually, I was a little tired, but we did some stuff. We did the ice bath, which is great. My wife was like, that's her favorite part of the camp, was the ice bath.
Nice.
It was the breathing. She's such a mindful person. I don't know, like she's just really into like mind body connection kind of. That was a huge thing for her. Like that, the breathing we did,
the breathing's fun, man. It's
breathing
cool to tap into it. You get that little body high at the end of it, and you feel good and you're relaxed. And she wasn't the only one. I remember like one of the other campers there was like sitting right in front of us. I mean, she was enjoying herself for a long while. You know what I mean? And like when everybody was sitting up after we were done doing the breathing exercises, you could tell everybody was just kind of quiet, relaxed. You know what I mean? It was fun to see.
Yeah, it was cool. So it was one of the cool experiences, and like, I don't know, it was just enjoyable. Like I really liked it. And also shout out to Ron, who kind of, is a big part of putting everything together. He runs the gym and puts these camps together. Dude, you need anything, like reach out to Ron, and he's got you. And it's just like, you just felt like you had everything kind of taken care of. And, being in Costa Rica for the first time for me, I didn't kind of know the lay of the land and stuff. So it was just cool to have a community there already, like people like that are there with you. You have stuff to do every evening, stuff together. It's not like there's advantages going doing stuff by yourself, but there's also like you had people around that you could kind of go do stuff with and build a sense of like community together, learning together and being around each other. It was a very cool experience. And I think it was a good experience for white belt to black belt. I think that me training with you regularly, but also, having some knowledge of these techniques, I got to perfect them or even like increase my ability to hit those techniques and to perform those techniques. And it was cool to see people that weren't familiar with that stuff, weren't familiar with you, able to develop and maybe spark something to create a different layer to their game.
Right.
Versus you go in and you have like a long session every single day and you learn a new thing every single day and you're like, don't remember anything. And that's also very, very exhausting to deal with that. So I think
or you
the way
learn
you structure
something and you don't have enough time to actually, you learn something new, you kind of like it, and you don't have enough time to actually work with it to improve it.
Yeah.
To make it usable.
Let me go back to something else I wanted to ask you. What was your favorite part about camp, and what made this camp a little different than the others?
Well, there was a few things. I mean, like one, having you and Jeff, two of my black belts with me, that was a lot of fun. Having you and your wives like there, because like Jess had a blast because it was like you and your wives hanging out with us. It was a lot of fun, so that
Mhm.
made it particularly fun for us because we had our had some of our friends from back home with us.
Sure.
You know what I mean? In that penthouse, because like I said, the year before was not. It wasn't nearly as much fun for us. I mean, the camp part was a blast,
Yeah.
but like just the hanging out part wasn't. Um, and then from there, the energy in the group was pretty good. Every group's a little different. And I remember talking to Ron about the camps, and I kind of told him, was like, I don't want mine to ever be too big. I don't want it to be too big. And the reason being is because it loses that intimacy,
Yeah.
that closeness. Like I want to be able to get into the camp and, like we had just under 30 campers, 30 people. By the end of that, I mean, by the end of the first day, I had everybody's name down,
Mhm.
and like I want to be able to do that. Also, like we had everybody kind of share a little bit about themselves at different periods of times, and I got to talk to people. I had a chance to pretty much roll with everybody. I had a chance to have a conversation with everybody, and just chat. Like, and so that's important to me because, again, you know, why are people coming to that camp? It's not just because of my technique. They're coming because partly like this is this guy that I feel like I know through these videos and these podcasts. Cool. Well, I'd like to get to know you too. And so it's cool. So I like it to be that intimate, that small group atmosphere. I like that. Um, but beyond that, it's the energy of the group was really good and I liked it. And so that group had a really good vibe. And I think that having you and Jeff with me was neat because you guys are like, you're an extension of me. And so you came down there and I've got two of my black belts, getting in the mix with all the people. And I think that added an interesting dynamic to it. You know what I mean? So, but so, yeah, I mean, that was, I mean, I guess the biggest difference. But overall, it was a cool camp and I liked the atmosphere
Yeah, it was
that the
great.
group brought to it,
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. It was a great vacation too, honestly. Like, not having to figure out where am I going to train, what's the schedule like. I already knew. All right, training's here, and I'm going to work around all those. The rest of the rest of the vacation is going to be built around the training
You
sessions.
basically
Yeah,
were living like a quasi living like a young jiu-jitsu athlete for, a week.
it's awesome.
Because I mean that's like when you look at like young guys and young jiu-jitsu athletes, they go train, they sleep, eat, take naps, go back train again and again. I mean that's what they do. That's what young athletes do. And so for us, I mean, I lived that life for a while, you know what I mean? So I know what that's like. But for some people that haven't done it before, it's kind of fun because you're like, man, like I can train a lot more than I thought I could because you're able to recover and you're not stressed about life constantly
Yeah,
doing all this other work. Because we don't realize it, but I mean, when you're doing stuff, that takes a lot out of you, man. Like work and everything else, it takes a lot more out of you than you think.
yeah. And I think that I would tell black belts to white belts, if you want to improve your jujitsu and have a fun vacation, man, these retreats are very cool. Like I literally like did not want to leave. When we were ready to leave, I was like, oh, I could spend a little more time here. So it was a great time. So I would tell anybody, if you're listening and you're on the fence about it, I was supposed to Glenn was having me do he's like, hey, talk about the camp, but like his mic wasn't working, so I didn't
Oh
get to
yeah.
do a testimonial. So I'll do it right now. I'll do a testimonial. I just think that if you want to have a great vacation, number one, meet some awesome people that are kind of like-minded in a lot of ways, that you're kind of there, think about your gym, think about how jiu-jitsu brings people together, having a cool community and doing some fun shit along the way, besides improving your jiu-jitsu, learning some good techniques and having some good times, man. It was a lot of fun. And if you're on the fence about going, I think you should definitely go. It was awesome. I'd do it again.
Yep, and you can when you go down there to Hero, if you guys ever do come to the Costa Rica camp, it's a cool way to see another country and
Yeah.
not have to really think about anything because you'll all you got to do is get a flight, and then once you get a flight, you'll get your shuttle, and then once you get to the actual city, your training, all that stuff, everything's pretty much taken care of. All you got to do now is just train and have a good time. That's it.
That's
So
right.
it's there's a lot to not have to think about, because a lot of times if you go on your own vacation, you got to think about everything, right? Like all the details, everything. And that can make vacations kind of stressful, right?
Sure.
Because then it's like you've got to have this timetable and all this stuff. This is just your training. And then, everything else is just kind of secondary. And
Yeah.
so it's a nice, like you said, you're working out, you're training a lot, but at the same time, it's relaxing and it's still, you're probably able to do more than what you think you could normally because you don't have all the normal stress and stuff from daily life, slapped on top of you.
Yeah, and if people don't know where to go, it's a herobjjretreats.com. Is that correct, Chew?
Yeah, herobjjretreats.com. And if you guys are on my email list, jujitsu.net/join my website. If you're on my email list, I usually give people a heads up when the camp opens up. Also, if you guys have ever been to one of my camps at my gym, those are where I announce those things. And again, they don't usually last very long, just a heads up. So like if you're not on the email list, a lot of times there aren't many spots left. Because like once I remember the camps that I have at the gym, they sold out in basically a couple days with some emails. So my email list gets the people in the Chew Crew email list, they get first crack at it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And same thing with like the Costa Rica camp. A lot of people came to the camp, they were on the email list and they got a hold of it that way. So again, if you guys aren't on there, if this kind of stuff is something you'd be interested in doing sometime next year, then I would definitely do that. Join a board. But yeah, hopefully to see you guys at some point down there. It's a blast. And hopefully you enjoy the podcast today. All right, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Again, I know it was a principal in the front end, and then Eugene and I rambling about the camp a bit because we just got back from it last week, not last week, this week.
Yep.
And but again, if you guys can, you should definitely join us at one of those. They're so much fun. It's one of those things. It's hard to put in. It's hard to put in an atmosphere into words. You know what I mean? It's very hard to like put your finger on that.
Yeah.
Because it's so much of a feeling thing, but it's got a really cool atmosphere. And, I try to do a few different things to enhance that a bit. And I've been told by several people that have come to the camps, there's like a few people who have been to multiple camps down there, that the ones that we do are their favorite because of that. Like the atmosphere is just different.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They just like it. So again, that said, if you guys have any questions about it, you can always shoot us a message and I can direct you if for some reason, if you ever want to join those or have a question about the camp. With that said, guys, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Charlotte's Web, charlottesweb.com. Charlotte's Web is a premier CBD company. They make amazing CBD products, third-party tested. So you know what is in the bottle or the box or whatever it is that you buy from them is what's in there. Because again, CBD is unregulated at this point. And so people can put whatever they want to in that stuff. They can put too much of something or too little of something, or they can even put compounds and substances into CBD products that are not even labeled on the labels. So again, it's cool to have a company that like Charlotte's Web that goes the extra mile to make sure that what they are delivering, what they say they're delivering is what they are in fact delivering. And again, they have a lot of different product lines that they're coming out with right now. Check them out at their website, charlottesweb.com. The new product line that they have coming out is called Recreate, which is more of using CBD along with some other like nutritional supplements combined in the product to support things like focus, rest, muscle recovery, that kind of stuff. So check them out at their website, charlottesweb.com. If you find something you like and you want to try, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 to save 20% off. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll for supporting the podcast, a longtime sponsor. If you were looking to get some new rash guards, shorts, gis, t-shirts, anything jiu-jitsu related, go to his website at epicrollbjj.com. When you go on his website, look through it, see what you find something you like, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. And again, you'll be getting some cool stuff back and buying from a company that is owned by an actual jiu-jitsu practitioner. Also, thanks to Choke Coffee Company. Choke Coffee Co. is the website. ChokeCoffeeCo.com is the website. ChokeCoffeeCo.com. Again, they are a coffee company made by jiu-jitsu practitioners, right? So most of you guys like getting yourself all hopped up on caffeine and then going and training, I like my coffee afterwards. If we ever talked with them before, I like using coffee for recovery more so than for amping up my workout. That said, they have a lot of cool roast, really good coffee. I've used it before. It's great. If you guys are interested, though, they are supporting a really cool organization called Guardian Gym. So a portion of the money that is used for when you buy a coffee, a portion of that money that they receive will go to support the Guardian Gym organization, which again brings jiu-jitsu to kids and families that are not in a position to pay for it. And they have their own locations, and I think in California and a number of places. And I think they begin to expand outside of the US, and they're bringing it to a lot of different places, basically sharing mixed martial arts style training to kids to try to support them in their lives. And there's been some really cool stories. Like one of them, one of their jiu-jitsu coaches, like they all got together and they bought this kid who had been with them for a while, bought him a car. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And yeah, it was cool. It was super cool to see that. They saw this kid, he was working his butt off, and like they gave him, gave him something for his basically doing what he should be doing, and I thought it was really cool. But so it's going to be supporting that organization, and you'll be getting some good coffee. It's a win-win. If you want to check out their website, chokecoffeeco.com, promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 10% off.
Yeah, and Chewy, they're doing that with Guardian Gym. They're doing that through the end of August of 2023.
Cool.
Yep.
And if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. You'll get access to an exclusive library we've been building for years. It has everything from rolls and stretching and warm-up routines to all sorts of other stuff. Podcast extras where we talk to podcast guests. You also get a version of the podcast that is ad-free. So if you don't want to listen to ads, you can do that as well. And again, upon joining that, you will be supporting the podcast and helping us keep going so that you can listen to us every week like you already do, right? And if you want to join my Chew Crew email list that I mentioned during the podcast, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks, and you will also get my daily email where I send out philosophical ideas, jiu-jitsu lessons, different things, stories, and I give exclusive offers to people in the email list that I do not send anywhere else. And so, guys, with that said, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having some good training, and we'll talk to you next week.